This is the final episode of my Trig Identities series, unless, of course, I run into something else and I need to cover that too. But for right now, this is the end. Okay, now the first thing I want to cover here, I'm sure the first thing you were asking is, why is it so important that this triangle right here, BAC, why is it so important that this is a right triangle? Why is it so important that BDC is a right triangle? Well, how else are we going to come up with the sine and the cosine of angle A and the sine and the cosine of angle B? You see, you have to know those sines and cosines in order to know the lengths of these lines. Well, the only way you can do that successfully is for this and this to be right triangles. They have to be right in order for it to work. Okay? Otherwise, you're tangling yourself with the law of cosines and law of sines, and that's a real mess, and you don't need to be dealing with that. So, it's better to have this as a right triangle, and of course this down here also has to be a right triangle for all of this to work. And that's why I told you what I told you. Okay? Now then, please ignore that telephone. Okay. Now, let's get out my marker one more time. And we're going to take this step by step. What is the sine of A minus B? What is that? Well, I'm going to show you. It's actually equal to the sine of A plus negative B. Now, what is the sine of A plus B? Well, let me write down what the sine of A plus B is. Got my notes. It's one bad thing about dry erase markers. Eventually they do start running out. So if you'll recall, the sine of A plus B is the sine of A times the cosine of B plus the cosine of A times the sine of B. Okay? That's the sine of A plus B. Now what about sine of A minus B? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start replacing those B's right there with negative B. That's what we're going to do. And we're going to do this real slow. Okay, so what do we do? Now we're saying that the sine of A plus negative B equals the sine of A times the cosine of negative B plus the cosine of A times the sine of negative B. Alright, now it looks kind of ugly, don't you think? Let's flip a few things around, shall we? Whoops. That looks a little bit better. But you say, well, wait a minute. How did we go from the cosine of negative b to the cosine of b? Do you remember back several videos ago where I actually proved that the cosine of a equals the cosine of negative a? Same's true with b. The cosine of b is equal to the cosine of negative b. So we just changed the negative b to a positive b because we have the trig identity of cosines. So that took care of that one. But we still have this little problem over here. Let's fix that one too. Whoops. Alright, if you'll remember, the sign of negative b is actually the negative sign of b. So what you'll do is you'll find the sign of b first, and then make a negative. But that still looks butt ugly. We need to change one more thing. Alright, what happens when you take a negative number times a positive number? Well, when you take a negative number times a positive number, you get a negative number. That's what we're going to change. Does that look a little more familiar to you? Now, all we have to do after this, to make this look exactly like it's supposed to, is change that negative b, like this, subtract that, and now you have the sign of a minus b equaling all of this. And that's exactly how it's supposed to look. And that's how we got it. Alright, we'll put this a little closer to you so you can actually see it. That's what we did. Alright, that way we don't have to have any more fancy diagrams or anything else for that matter. That was just getting me downright redundant. I want to thank you very much for watching all my presentations. I hope you learned a bunch. I know I did. And let me know what you thought about all this. I tell you, I really have learned a bundle. A lot of valuable information. Who would have known about Claudius Ptolemy? Who would have known about the law of sines and cosines that came directly out of Euclid? Wow. I bet you didn't even know about Ptolemy's theorem until I introduced it to you. Alright, so don't say you don't have a good education now because I just gave it to you on a silver platter. Alright, I will tell you more in a future video. Stay tuned.